Hi everybody. So you are dating somebody from a different culture other than yours. Let's say you're an African American woman dating an African man, or vice versa. It behooves you to pay attention to the history from which that person came, because your history is not the same as their history. So the way that you were raised and the way that your men from your culture or from your history are raised is not the same as them. Okay, let me go a little bit deeper. African men are raised in a strongly traditional paternalistic male culture. They don't need you to affirm their manhood. They don't need you to allow them to express their masculinity. They don't need you or need your permission to be men. Sometimes they take it too far, okay? But they don't have the issue that some African American men have, where it's almost as if the society does not allow them to be men, and so they have to almost get permission from their women to be men, which I think is a sad state of things, really. Okay? So when you are an African American woman who, because I've been in this country now for 13 years or 14 years, and one thing I have observed is the gross disrespect that the African American men seem to garner from the society, from the African American women. They say, he ain't good for nothing, he ain't doing shit, and they just treat them a certain way, and they behave to them a certain way, and they just and the men live up to this too. Okay, the men live up to this. But if you are going to go to an African man, you better know that you cannot bring that kind of attitude to an African man. An African man may be broke and poor, but he will never let you question or insult his masculinity, ever. Okay? So, when you are dating somebody from a totally different culture, it behooves you to understand the cultural environment from whence they came, because you cannot separate a person from their culture. Okay, so you already understand that an African man was raised in a strongly paternalistic society where, women didn't have much of a voice. That has changed in the last 20 years. But the men that were raised at 30 years and above were raised where the men had a role in the society, women had a role in the society, and the role of men was respected. Okay, so these men have their sense of masculinity intact. Okay, and they express it freely because it's the way they are. Now, an African American male, on the other hand, lives or has lived in a society where they have been systematically emasculated. So much so that even within their own society, the women do not respect them. And so the way that an African American woman will treat an African American man will not be acceptable to an African man. Okay? So now, if you're an African woman dating an African American male, you gotta understand that these men need a lot of support. You gotta understand that some of the things that you take for granted because you were raised by men in a strong African society where men were supported, and where men were, the strength of men was praised, and where men were allowed to be men, is a totally different society that the African American man lived. Okay, so you almost need to give him extra room, extra space to be comfortable, and then to express that masculinity. Okay, so a lot of African American women who grew up with this image of men as being whatever they think that men are, will bring that same attitude to an African man and find that it's not going to work. Okay, same thing goes for the Caucasian male, who, even though they express their masculinity, they don't express it in the way an African man would. It's a more softer version. It's a more warmer version, because the way masculinity is expressed in that kind of society, in that society, is different from the way it's expressed in the African society. Okay, so my point is this: if you are dating somebody from a different culture, it behooves you to understand the culture that person was raised. It behooves you to understand the history of that culture so you can know how to behave and relate to them appropriately. Okay, African American men, they're the most, you know, every time I see one of them, I go out of my way to be extra kind. I go out of my way to be extra respectful. I go out of my way to be extra honoring to them, because I feel so bad the way the society just, you know, tears them down, and the African American women are not even aware of this, and so they indirectly support the emasculinization or emasculation, whatever that word is. You know, when they emasculate men, they indirectly support that. Okay, because African American male, if you look at where they came from a really, really horrible, torturous. Nah, I've just been speaking words this afternoon. Like really tough background, and they still live in a very tough environment. Okay, and so when these women in the African American culture have no regard for their men, some of them, not all of them, and they bring that attitude to an African man, it backfires on their ass. Because you ain't finna, no, not to an African man, bro. You ain't finna do that. And an African woman who goes to an African American man, you gotta understand that he's not going to be as comfortable, you know, he's not going to express his masculinity the way, you know, an African man would. But if you give him room and support him and create an environment where he feels safe, then you can fan into flame that fire that I know is in them, that fire that society has tried to quench, that fire, because ultimately they are our brothers too. And the same blood of kings is in their veins too. And it just needs the right environment for it to blossom. I hope this helps somebody. And I just get so overly emotional about, you know, but women just don't understand this. They don't understand that they are playing a role in tearing down the male. Without the male, there's no female. Female are the darkness. The male is the light. To be able to use and to function in a society, you need both dark and light, because without the light, there's no dark. And without the darkness, you can't see the light. The only way you can see the light is in the darkness. Does this make sense?